somebody just, actually, it was Ben Rubber, linked to this article on Twitter. So let's see, let's pop the web browser, or at least this one tab. Bring it over here. So, The Last American Vagabond. WEF warns of cyber attack leading to systemic collapse of the global financial system. So Ben Rubber linked this and asked me what I thought. I haven't read it yet. This will be a cold reading. So, a report published last year by the WEF Carnegie Cyber Policy Initiative calls for the merging of Wall Street banks, their regulators, and intelligence agencies as necessary to confront an allegedly imminent cyber attack that will collapse the existing financial system. Wow. I mean, that's pretty telling right there. Just in that sort of sub-headline, calls for, increased centralizing of control of financial systems, based on this nebulous threat. I mean, it's nebulous because I haven't started reading the article yet. But in November 2020, the World Economic Forum, WEF, and Carnegie Endowment for International Peace co-produced a report that warned that the global financial system was increasingly vulnerable to cyber attacks. Advisors to the group that produced the report included representatives from the Federal Reserve, the Bank of England, the International Monetary Fund, Wall Street giants like JP Morgan Chase, and Silicon Valley behemoths like Amazon. The ominous report was published just months after the World Economic Forum had conducted a simulation of that very event, a cyber attack that brings the global financial system to its knees, in partnership with Russia's largest bank, which is due to jumpstart that country's economic digital transformation with the launch of its own central bank-backed digital currency. More recently, last Tuesday, the largest information-sharing organization in the financial industry, whose known members include Bank of America, Wells Fargo, and Citigroup, have again warned that nation-state hackers and cyber criminals were poised to work together to attack the global financial system in the short term. The CEO of this organization, known as the Financial Services Information Sharing and Analysis Center, FSISAC, or FSISAC, had previously advised the World Economic Forum Carnegie report that had warned much the same. Such coordinated simulations and warnings from those who dominate the current ailing financial system are an obvious cause for concern, particularly given that the World Economic Forum is well known for its Event 201 simulation about a global coronavirus pandemic that took place just months prior to the COVID-19 crisis. The COVID-19 crisis has since been cited as the main justification for accelerating the digital transformation of the financial and other sectors that the Forum and its partners have promoted for years. Their latest prediction of a doomsday event, a cyber attack that stops the current financial system in its tracks and instigates its systemic collapse, would offer the final yet necessary step for the Forum's desired outcome of this widespread shift to digital currency and increased global governance of the international economy. Given that experts have been warning since the last global financial crisis that the collapse of the entire system was inevitable due to central bank mismanagement and rampant Wall Street corruption, a cyber attack would also provide the perfect scenario for dismantling the current failing system, as it would absolve central banks and corrupt financial institutions of any responsibility. It would also provide a justification for incredibly troubling policies promoted by the WEF Carnegie report, such as a greater fusion of intelligence agencies and banks in order to better protect, in quotes, protect critical financial infrastructure. Considering the precedent of the WEF's past simulations and reports with the COVID-19 crisis, it is well worth examining the simulations, warnings, and policies promoted by these powerful organizations. The remainder of this report will examine the WEF Carnegie report from November 2020, while a follow-up report will focus on the more recent FSISAC report published last week. The WEF simulation of a cyber attack on the global financial system, Cyber Polygon 2020, was covered in detail by Unlimited Hangout in a previous report. The WEF Carnegie Cyber Policy Initiative. The Carnegie Endowment for International Peace is one of the most influential foreign policy think tanks in the United States, with close and persistent ties to the U.S. State Department, former presidents, corporate America, and American oligarch clans like the Pritzkers and Hyatt Hotels. Current trustees of the endowment include executives from Bank of America and Citigroup, as well as other influential financial institutions. In 2019, the same year as Event 201, the endowment launched its Cyber Policy Initiative with the goal of producing an international strategy for cybersecurity and global financial systems, 2021 to 2024. That strategy was released just months ago in November 2020 and, according to the endowment, was authored by, quote, leading experts in government, central banks, industry, and the technical community, close quote, in order to provide a, quote, longer-term international cybersecurity strategy, close quote, specifically for the financial system. The initiative is an outgrowth of past efforts of the Carnegie Endowment to promote the fusion and financial authorities, the financial industry, law enforcement, and national security agencies, which is both a major recommendation of the November 2020 report and a conclusion of a 2019 high-level roundtable between the endowment, the IMF, and central bank governors. The endowment had also partnered with the IMF, SWIFT, Standard Chartered, and FSISAC to create a, quote, cyber resilience capacity building toolbox, close quote, for financial institutions in 2019. That same year, the endowment also began tracking, quote, the evolution of the cyber threat landscape and incidents involving financial institutions, close quote, in collaboration with BAE Systems and the UK's largest weapons manufacturer. Per the endowment, this collaboration continues into the present. In January 2020, representatives of the Carnegie Endowment presented their cyber policy initiative at the annual meeting of the World Economic Forum, after which the forum officially partnered with the endowment on the initiative. Advisors to the now joint WEF Carnegie project include representatives of central banks like the U.S. Federal Reserve and European central banks, some of Wall Street's most infamous banks like Bank of America and JP Chase, law enforcement organizations such as Interpol, and the U.S. Secret Service, corporate giants like Amazon and Accenture, and global financial institutions like the International Monetary Fund and SWIFT. Other notable advisors include the managing director and head of the WEF's Center for Cybersecurity, Jeremy Jurgens, who was also a key player in the cyber polygon simulation, and Steve Silberstein, the CEO of the Financial Services Information Sharing and Analysis Center. Again, FSISAC. Not a question of if, but when. The Cyber Policy Initiative's November 2020 report is officially titled, quote, International Strategy to Better Protect the Financial System, close quote. It begins by noting that the global financial system, like many other systems, are, quote, going through unprecedented digital transformation, which is being accelerated by the coronavirus pandemic, close quote. It then warns that, begin block quote, malicious actors are taking advantage of this digital transformation and pose a growing threat to the global financial system, financial stability, and confidence in the integrity of the financial system. Malign actors are using cyber capabilities to steal from, disrupt, and otherwise threaten financial institutions, investors, and the public. These actors include not only increasingly daring criminals, but also states and state-sponsored attackers, end block quote. Following the warning of so-called malign actors, the report notes that, quote, increasingly concerned, key voices are sounding the alarm, close quote. It notes that Christine Lagarde of the European Central Bank and formerly of the IMF warned in February 2020 that, quote, a cyber attack could trigger a serious financial crisis, close quote. A year prior, at the WEF's annual meeting, the head of Japan's central bank predicted that, quote, a cybersecurity could become the financial system's most serious risk in the near future, close quote. It also notes that in 2019, Jamie Dimon of JP Chase similarly labeled cyber attacks as possibly, quote, the biggest threat to the U.S. financial system, close quote. Not long after Lagarde's warning, in April 2020, the Financial Stability Board asserted that, quote, cyber incidents pose a threat to the stability of the global financial system, close quote, and that, quote, a major cyber incident, if not properly contained, could seriously disrupt financial systems, including critical financial infrastructure, leading to broader financial stability implications, close quote. The WEF Carnegie Report, I'm not sure if I'm going to go much further with this. It is very repetitive. Anyway, and also I see I have a message from Rose. Let's see. The WEF Carnegie Report authors add that concerns that, quote, the exploitation of cyber vulnerabilities could cause losses to investors and the general public, close quote, and lead to significant damage to public trust and confidence in the current financial system. It also notes, aside from affecting the general public in a significant way, this threat would impact both high-income countries and low to lower middle-income countries, meaning its impact on the masses will be global in scope. The report then ominously concludes that, quote, one thing is clear, it is not a question of if a major incident will happen, but when, close quote. Ensuring control of the narrative. All right, I'm going to give this thing like 5 more paragraphs to break into some new territory, and otherwise I'll just wrap it up. Another section of the report details recommendations for controlling the narrative in the event such a crippling cyber attack takes place. The report specifically recommends that, quote, financial authorities and industry should ensure they are properly prepared for influence operations and hybrid attacks that combine influence operations with malicious hacking activity, close quote, and that they, quote, apply lessons learned from the influence operations targeting electoral processes to potential attacks on financial institutions, close quote. It goes on to recommend that, quote, major financial services firms, central banks, and other financial supervisory authorities, close quote, representatives of which advise the WEF Carnegie Report, quote, identify a single point of contact within each organization to engage social media platforms for crisis management, close quote. The report's authors argue that, quote, in the event of a crisis such as a devastating cyber attack on the global banking system, quote, social media companies should swiftly amplify communications by central banks, close quote, so that central banks may, quote, debunk fake information and calm the markets, close quote. It also states that, quote, financial authorities, financial services firms, and tech companies, presumably, including social media companies, should develop a clear communications and response platform on being able to react swiftly, close quote. Notably, both Facebook and Twitter are listed in the report's appendix as industry stakeholders that have engaged with the WEF Carnegie Initiative. The report also asserts that premeditated coordination for such a crisis between banks and social media companies needs to take place so that both parties may, quote, determine what severity of crisis would necessitate amplified communication, close quote. The report also calls for social media companies to work with central banks to, quote, develop escalation paths similar to those developed in the wake of the past election interference as seen in the United States and Europe, close quote. Okay, I'm going to stop there. I think I get the gist of this thing, and I'm less than halfway through it. I don't know what this website is. Let's see. The Last American Vagabond. So what is their about us? Let's check out. What is their program? What is their agenda? The Last American Vagabond was established to allow a free flow of information in regard to current issues that face the world. The focus being on many such issues that are purposefully and discreetly culled by those who stand to lose, either financially or professionally, due to their relevance. It is this site's primary objective to bring these issues to an open forum and to bring about awareness of these topics of paramount importance. All right. So, Ben Rubber asks, what do I think? Well, I think that it sounds, if this is an accurate report, if the citations are not being taken out of context and whatnot, it sounds like the next stage. the Davos set, the World Economic Forum people, Klaus Schwab and such, the whole coronavirus thing worked wonders, that it allowed them to shut down travel, to prevent people from gathering and from socializing normally. It normalized people not going to work, and it allowed for massive, huge transfers of wealth upward, and also, once again, enormous expansions of the fiat money supply. So yeah, I mean, it sounds like they're planning to use fear of a cyber attack, and they're rehearsing, how to respond to the cyber attack. Will the people spreading fear and demanding preparations for the cyber attack also be responsible for the cyber attack? It's easy to imagine. Is it true? I don't know. I do know, or it is my opinion anyway, that the coronavirus is not nearly serious enough in terms of the number of people that it affects and the death rate of people infected by it to justify the response, particularly the response of giving massive gifts to corporate America and to the wealthiest citizens in our society. That just wasn't justified. So, the cyber attack could be a piddling little thing. It might not do much serious damage, but, it might provide the cover for the intentional shutdown of the economy again, and also the confiscation of people's savings. And possibly of their property. I mean, if the financial services are inoperative, you might have trouble proving that you own your house. You might have trouble proving that your car is indeed paid off. But, it's very easy to give in to the desire to spin paranoid fantasies, but, the old trope, just because you're paranoid doesn't mean they aren't out to get you. So anyway, very short live stream. I'm going to shut it down and talk to my lovely girlfriend in the Philippines. So I will catch you all later.